So when I was thinking about this project, I had a very hard time coming up with a focus statement. But the reason I think I was having such a hard time is because when people think about math, they're not thinking that there's English involved. So to counter that, my focus statement is that there needs to be more focus on English in math class, and that teachers, specifically math teachers, need to realize this and find that focus. So I believe that the importance of English is underaddressed in math. A lot of times students come into class and believe that it's all numbers and there's no English really involved. But it is very important that you understand what you are doing prior to actually doing it. You need to understand the words and the vocabulary in order to do all of the math aspect of it. And in my opinion, English in math is just as important as it is in English. There are a lot of strategies that can be used universally, and I am not seeing them be used universally. They are being used in just English. And I think this is something to do with the fact that it's the secondary level. I think all of the classes are a lot more segregated the higher up in schooling you go. I think in elementary school and even a little bit into middle school, they're all pretty segregated because a lot of times the students only have one teacher and they're able to interrelate everything because they're planning all of the different lessons for all of the different subjects. While as they get older, it's one teacher per subject and that's it. And a lot of times there's not even meetings between the different teachers of different grade levels on a regular basis, unless there's something that needs to be discussed. So there are many strategies that can be used and utilized in the math classroom that would benefit not only English language learners tremendously, but all of the students in the classroom. In the next few minutes, I'll explain a couple of those. I've chosen 3 of my top favorite and how they can help students who are struggling as English learners. The first strategy I chose is that I believe that every math teacher should have a reference book in their classroom. Specifically starting with very basic vocabulary words that are needed to complete the course. There are tons of math vocabulary words that as a teacher I take for granted that my students know. This is something that I shouldn't do, and as I have been taking this course, I have realized that I am taking for granted that these students know all of these different vocabulary words. But because they are so basic, I assumed that they were taught them, but they haven't been. And this goes for English language learners. If they had that reference book to look at, as we went through the course, we added to it and kept adding those important vocabulary words, and they would have something to look back at. Now, the kind of reference book that I think that math teachers should have is a little bit different than a regular reference book. I think there should be 4 columns in this textbook, or in this reference book. The first column should have the vocabulary word. Then in the second column, I think there should be the definition. In the third column, I think that there should be an example of this word used in context, because the best way for students to learn is to learn it in context, which we have talked about throughout this course, and we've read about it and we watched videos on it. I think then the fourth column I think should be is if this is something that needs to be used in an example, such as something I'm teaching recently is an inequality symbol. There would be an example of how that inequality symbol is used with all of the numbers and the math terms. And I think that it needs all of that to be included in order for it to be beneficial, because then no matter what, that student will have that to look back on. This idea I took from Chapter 2 of English only teachers in mixed language classrooms, the survival guide, and I also combined it with Strategy 63 in 120 content book because I felt that those ideas were very important, and I think this is something that needs to be related more towards math. The second strategy that I think math teachers need to focus more on is to teach the students how to take notes and how to read the notes that they take. This is something that I see as a huge issue, is that the students are copying these notes down and taking these notes, but then they don't know how to look back at them to do their homework. They don't understand how to read those examples, and this is something that we need to teach, and I think a good way that we could teach this is by teaching the students how to look at examples to do their homework and how to use those examples, and this is almost like teaching them how to scaffold on their own. So by scaffold, I mean they'll do a problem with that example sitting right next to them and being able to look at it right next to it. Then they'll put it away, and if they need it, they'll pull it out. Then the next step is to not even look at their notes at all. And I think these scaffolding strategies are important things to help students learn, but we have to teach students how to do that. Otherwise, they won't know how to do any of it. And this is something that I've been working on, is trying to teach my students how to use their examples to do their homework. And how to teach them how to read and how to take notes. And this is the idea I got from Strategies 75 and 76 from the 120 content book. And then the last strategy that I think that math teachers should focus on in their classrooms is the way that we look at and treat group work. At times, it is always beneficial to split students up by ability level. That way you can work with that lower group that needs that extra help and extra attention. But should we always be doing that as teachers? I don't think so. When I have recently redone my seating chart, I paired lower students with higher students. That way they have somebody to help them with some of the material if they get lost. And this is an idea that I took from Module 4 video on pair and group work, and I think that it is a great idea. And a lot of teachers think that students should just be split up by ability level, and are there cases where that is true? Yes, but not always. In a classroom where students are taking the same course, you should split them up based on however you would like. And that's not by ability level, just pair them up randomly. That is the last strategy that I'm going to talk about, but overall I think there's a big theme occurring in the math teacher world. I think that a lot of math teachers, myself included when I was going through undergrad, I did not think a lot of these reading and writing courses were relevant to me. And this is because of the fact that none of the professors that I had ever related anything to math. It was always history or science. It wasn't really even ever related to English. It was just we're relating this English writing and reading to science and to social studies. And I would always ask for how it would work in math, and I never got a straight answer. So I think something that really needs to change is the way that math teachers look at these strategies, and also the way that math teachers are taught about these strategies. I think all of these things could be very beneficial to English language learners, and I think that they would help them to succeed in all that they do. I think that they would help all the students in the class as well. That reference book would be very important with all of the different vocabulary words and the examples. It's something to look back on as they are going through. Taking notes is key. Learning or teaching students how to take notes is something that they will use for the rest of their lives. And group work, I can't stress that enough, how important I think group work is. And overall, I think that using these strategies is what needs to be done. It's easier said that you'll use a strategy, but I think that the most important part about these strategies is actually implementing them and doing them.